Welcome back, team. It seems like everywhere you look, the economic headlines as it relates to the real estate market is sending mixed signals. You hear whispers of a cooling national market. We see interest rates creating questions. And even in some of the stronger housing markets across the country, there seems to be a sense of uncertainty that many of us haven't felt for years. But while the national narrative unfolds, the real story, the one that actually matters to you, is happening right here on the brick-lined streets of Winter Park, because all real estate is local. And if we're being honest, Winter Park is always played by its own set of rules. So whether you've lived here for 20 years or you've been watching closely your favorite zip code as it evolves here in the Winter Park area, dreaming of calling this area home, you're going to get a very clear data deep dive. No speculation. You're going to know exactly what's happening. Is buyer demand unwinding? Are we seeing prices across Winter Park soften? We're going to take a detailed look at both zip codes separately, so that if you're looking to own here or you own here now, you're going to have a clear understanding of just how the market looks going into 2026. And we're even going to make a few predictions so that you can make good plans proceeding forward. With all that being said, let's dive into the update. All right, as we get into the data, for anyone just scanning the market here, it's important to understand why the data behaves like it does. And at its core, Winter Park is the perfect blend of historic charm and modern luxury. And ultimately, this area was founded really for wealthy Northerners as a winter retreat. And even today, you have stunning chains of lakes, A-rated schools, and you have a very walkable small town feel. And again, you're just 15 minutes from the hustle of downtown. And as we look at these two areas, the two zip codes in Winter Park, they have a very unique identity, very unique price point. We're going to set the stage to show you exactly how both of them are. All right, first up, we're going to dive into 32789. And you want to think of this as the historic heart of the city, okay? This is Park Avenue and Rollins College, grand lakefront estates. So the charts we're looking at, all the data is coming from the behind the paywall of the Realtor's board. You have to have a real estate license to even have access to this. But the data we're showing you, again, we are starting with 32789. The chart on screen starts back in January of 2018, runs all the way to the most recent month here in the summer of 2025. We're now mid-year. Now you can see this big run up in price. Most of 18 and 2019, pricing hovered between a $600,000 and $800,000 median price. You can see today that in the last 6 months, February of 2025 marks the high so far of this year at 1.32 for our median sell price, and a bottom around 874. You can see it bumps around because there's a very wide range of sales here. So even the median is supposed to be the sanest, down the middle, unaffected by highs and lows as it gets. But you can see for most of our pricing charts throughout Central Florida, they're not this bumpy, but 789 is the highest price zip code. And one thing I want you to see, look at this. This is June 2022. What happened then was this was the end of the 3% 30-year fix. This June marks really where most markets kind of marked a high at the end of pandemic before the headwinds pushed in of high interest rates that stymied a lot of buyer activity from there. Now, you can see that this even saw a little bit of a dip right here coming into 2023 before it grabbed its legs and started to build back up. Now, I want to call some things to your attention. So we have a high back here in 2022 of 1.2. That would be the high before the interest rates shuffled on us. And now you can see even this year, we've had multiple months that were above the 1.2 mark. Very volatile still. I would still say that by and large, this is a sideways running market, okay? If anything, you could see there might even be an opportunity for a buyer in this market because the peak months this year are actually lower, slightly lower than the peak months of last year. So 2024, the top 2 months were a little higher, but you can see by and large, it is a stable, flat market. The lows aren't the lowest in history, and the highs are not punching off the charts at all in 2025. It's just very stable. So we're going to have to see what else is going on in this market. Hey, it's me interrupting myself. You considering selling your home? Make one call, that's all, and put my nearly 23 years of experience and nearly 4,000 homes sold to work for you.
Jared Jones is the way to go. Call 706-5000.
All right, next up, we want to keep an eye on how buyer demand is doing. So one of the things I want to point out, look at how high pre-pandemic summer months would get. So you would push 55 to 60 units in the peak months of summer. Now look down here. Look how many months running that it's been since we were at 60 units or even close to it in the summertime. It has just been a smaller market. Okay. So buyer volume has really fallen between 20 and 40 units every single month for like 3 years running. It is a smaller market. If you look against all the prior months, so right here you have June against last June, we were up 68%, down 7, down 20, down 8, down 3, up 35%. So you have these big wide swings in all directions. When you average it all out, it's pretty stable against last year. The amount of buyers transacting right now, again, against pre-pandemic numbers, is just still not back yet. The numbers just still aren't there. Now, next chart we're looking at is how many new listings are pushing in the market. This is the area that home buyers, so people looking to buy into this area, are closely watching. They're saying, is there going to be a lot of supply? Is there going to be a deluge of new homes for sale or unsold homes sitting around? And this is something that everybody is constantly watching as of the last 2.5 years. Look at this. You can see that all the market data still, again, just like buyer activity, this market activity of sellers pushing homes into the market, much lower than pre-pandemic. You can see the spikes through the summer. Every year, it would go into the summer and back down, into the summer and back down in winter. You can see as we head into the pandemic territory, the numbers got smaller, and now each year, the size of sellers pushing homes in the market is very anemic. So that's one thing to consider. But take a look in the last 90 days, that is April, May, and June, there were a tad bit more listings brought into the market than the year prior. But then you had a couple months of negatives. So you had a positive January. And again, if you look back in the most recent 2-year stretch, 789 zip code has been pretty tight. It's not a lot of supply. So that's the thing. You just have, in general, a smaller marketplace. This is happening in a lot of areas. Areas like Winter Park that are more established, that didn't have a lot of new construction, a lot of housing units added to the area to create all kinds of new supply and new purchases. The marketplace is kind of locked up because all of these folks, a high percentage in this zip code, they have no mortgage at all. And the other half that have mortgages maybe have low interest rates and not looking to get rid of them. So essentially you have just a lot less people moving around. All right, the next chart we're looking at is actual closed sales. And obviously this year, closings are slower. You see a lot of numbers from January till June. 789 were not keeping pace even with 2024. So there's a lot less transactions. Take a look at the numbers too. So your closed unit volume are 22 to 32 units for the most part all year long, which is wild because if you take a step back and look at the chart I just showed you on the previous last 60 seconds, you will see the new listings. You'll see the number of new listings, that is the numbers hitting the market, are consistently higher than this. Most of it's like 39 to 46, 47 units coming into the market, and they're not selling them off at the same pace. So you know, my friends, what that means when it goes to look at the unsold inventory list, we should see it climbing. And lo and behold, here's active inventory, unsold homes. Look at what happened. So you had 85, 87 units in December and January, and then it grew to 99, then it grew to 130. So over time, you're starting to see this picking back up again, which honestly, every single year, you start to see a little bit of an increase in the summer. Look at last July. It was up to 121 units before it starts to abate and many people pull their house off the market if they didn't sell through the summer months. So this year we pushed a little bit higher, but look at history, folks. So one of the things you want to consider is this growth, right? Again, we're not really much higher than we were in 2024. Closings are down. So a lot of people are going to close up shop, get their home off the market for holidays, and they weren't necessarily successful. What that means, and this is a prediction, okay? I believe that in 2026, you will see a higher supply chain for sale next summer as well. So ultimately what will happen is a lot of these sellers that pulled off the market that want to give it a try next year, patient, they come back in spring, that you're going to end up seeing probably the net numbers around 150 by the end of summer because you're going to have even more people that will need to move. So if you're a buyer and you're looking for a specific house and you haven't seen it in the past 18 months, I suspect next year you will have more options. But now look at this. Look at the prehistoric history for Winter Park. Winter Park usually sits around 200 units in summer. Look at April 2019. It pushed towards 250 units. You can see we're barely at half that now in 2025. So obviously the case can't be made for this area that there's some untenable amount of real estate. Now, do I think things would be awesome for Winter Park if somehow they push to 250 units next year? You never know. But I have a feeling that there are a good amount of buyers that if they had the right piece of real estate in the market, they'd jump in and buy it. The market would be larger. But one thing I would say remains is that you have fewer sales because you have fewer options. Half, in fact, compared to pre-pandemic norms. Two more points I want to make before I shift to 32792. Number one, nearly half of 789 zip code is cash buyers, around 45%, common number. So you have a lot of folks with cash. Makes me wonder that obviously there are challenges with getting cash out of other markets. So relocating or inbound relocating buyers, if they have a house they need to liquidate in order to move here, for instance, the Winter Park, it is taking them longer, and that is delaying purchases. Number two, price cut percentages for 789 is 28%. Nearly 1 out of 3 homes that do sell, 28% of them need a price cut in order to get to the closing table. This is also a little less than the entire Orlando metro average, was around 31%. If 1 out of 3 sounds like a high percentage for price cuts, understand that this is actually pretty consistent. If you look at an 8-year average for the price cut percentages in Winter Park, it runs this way consistently. So it's not really, it's elevated a tad, but it's not off the charts high. All right, team, we have median sale price pulled up, and now we want to shift gears to 32792. And to set the stage here, this zip code is primarily in Seminole County. This kind of represents a more accessible suburban side of Winter Park. Offers good prices, at least definitely more affordable than 789. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But it has a high appeal, particularly for schools, school access to UCF, access to Full Sail, Trinity Prep. And circling back, take a look. We have a median sale price of $475,000. This zip code is about 5% higher in price than the Orlando metro at large. So looking at the entire area, a little bit over for the area itself, but far cheaper, right? When you're running a $1.1 to $1.3 million median sale price in the other zip code in Winter Park. So 200% lower than the neighboring zip code. So homes would be much more affordable here. But take a look. I always like to look back here when the interest rate shot up from 3 to about 7.5% in mid 2022. This kind of represented the end of rapid price appreciation. It went up, 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 and then it hits a wall. In the midsummer of that year, it went from around 440, 445. It hit a little spike at 480. But if you cut a line through here, it really was around 450, maybe 460. Today, it's at 475. Last month, in fact, being the highest number reached all year at about $478,000, which is what I keep telling people. People say, there's a housing correction coming. The correction's here. We got to, homes are going to be so much cheaper. And people have been really kind of waiting for this for now 3 years. And I keep saying it's going sideways. And I know buyers get excited. They're watching the news. They want some steal in the marketplace, not just in Winter Park. They say this about any place in Florida, particularly in Orlando. And I'm like, your competition is going to be outbidding you for the property. And on the other hand, you have this static housing price. And what people don't realize is that an even price, meaning a price sliding literally sideways for 3 years, is a housing correction. I've said this before. Listen, if you look at a 50-year history of appreciation for the state of Florida, it is a 5% annual rate of growth for 50 years straight. If you average it out, okay? If you have 3 years running where your housing market literally does nothing, that is a correction when the average gain is 5%. If it runs sideways long enough and everybody else in the general health of the economy is relatively okay, you are correcting, okay? Everybody has a little bit of a shock built into their system from the 2008 hype and how things got really bad for real estate. And I was in it. I was selling a lot of it. I ended up selling a lot of REO and bank-owned property. The reality is this is not the same correction, plainly. And a lot of people have psyched themselves out to sit on the sidelines for long enough. And now they're like, the market looks the same for 3 years. The interest rates look the same for 3 years. So it's like, what? Take your shot or keep renting. I understand the mental dilemma, but the data is unmistakable. It is unmistakable. You can stare at this chart all day and you could have people making videos 3 years ago about Florida saying this is going down 30%, 50%, all that. What has happened? Okay. You can see it for yourself. Now, I will say if you are in the market to buy, you have to plan for this reality. You have to plan for a long-term hold, which is traditionally how we've always bought real estate. You don't buy and just keep jumping in and out of it like it's a stock. That's not how you do it. And if you buy a house, understand 450,000, 800,000, whatever the house price is, you're going to have 5-6% cost of sale. You can't do that next year in a flat static housing market. You have to make sure you're in it for a minute. You got to even be planning to hold it, cash it out, rent it, whatever you want to do. But that's just the reality of the circumstances. All right, team, the next chart we're looking at is buyer activity. This is new pending sales. And there have been very big swings in the zip code of 792 in 2025, and we're going to find out why. One of the things I want you to see, look at the last 120 days. In March, 69% more sales than prior year. In April, 53% up. They had a down month in May, negative 27.5. Then in June, up 45.5. That is a big move, way different than 789. One of the things I want to tell you at the outset is this marketplace, unlike the 789 zip code, 30% of sales here are cash. So a third less transactions, okay? And honestly, the last couple months, you're starting to see some months where there's only 25 to 30% of those transactions are from cash. And one of the things that I think is obviously more of the 792 zip code needs a finance buyer. Finance buyers in this particular area get frustrated because there is still cash firepower that will show up and get a good house because great homes, they bring offers. And right now, I think there's an opportunity where if you are a finance buyer, you've been trying to get in this zip code, the door has got to crack. It's cracked open a little where you have a little bit of a slowdown from the cash buying pool. Again, if you watched the zip code preceding this one, the data and some of the things I pointed out is there's a more difficult time in some of the northern buyers that come oftentimes move here. They sell their home in New York, Jersey, Washington, wherever, come south and then compete with you with all that equity out of those houses from up north that were a lot of times bigger tickets than what they're buying. You can see there's going to be a little bit more opportunity because right now there's definitely been a softening, but look at these numbers. Over the past 2 years, this is the size of the market. From you have January going into summer, the peak months, then back down every year, back up, back down. Obviously, these market sizes, they're peaking out around 40 units every year. Look how big the market was before. Every summer, the market peaked at around 55 to 75 units, all the way up here, back down, all the way up here, back down, into the pandemic. And then as soon as interest rates spiked, everybody stopped listing their homes and buyers stopped buying homes. The marketplace shrank. Now it's not half the size, but it's way less transaction volume happening through the summer. But this is a marked move upward, folks. A lot more buyers made moves. And this is much, much different than the neighboring zip code. All right, we just saw the demand side. That's how many buyers are putting homes under contract. It's the leading indicator of how many closings you're going to have. This is new listings. This is the supply chain side. And you can see, look through this year, okay? So January, 38% more listings than prior year. February, up 23. March, up 123%. Huge number of listings coming in the market. April, 45%. So every single month this year, save the month of May, there were more listings coming into the market. Isn't that interesting? There's your argument. More listings hit, more buyers activated. And this is kind of the opposite of what you're seeing in some of the other markets. There's not a lot of supply coming to the market. There's not a lot of buyers. A lot of people are making the argument online saying, if you saw more listings, there'd just be a deluge of listings sitting everywhere and no one would buy them. And I guess maybe there could be truth to that, but it depends on where you're at. And I can tell you here, there is a big move in 2025 with more supply hitting in 792 and buyers are there for it. Look at closed sales. Opposite of 789, not a single negative number in terms of year over year number of closed sales. No surprise. As I mentioned, leading indicator, you have a lot of pendings. The pendings were up. So as a result, there's no surprise that closings followed because not all those deals canceled. All right, team, the next chart we have is unsold inventory. We like to call it active inventory. You can see down here in the pandemic lows, there was next to nothing on the market, but you can tell, look at this year, just like I was telling you, the market size in 792 is growing. That big push of sellers bringing homes to the market finally drew the numbers higher, and it actually had a bump down. So right here, look at the pre-pandemic levels. This is what we would say things looked like when things were quote unquote normal. Because the supply chain became completely disrupted through this down cycle of low interest rates, all those kinds of things. Look at this. Most of the marketplace prior was around 120, 122 units. You can see they came really close to that in May, hit 124 units, which was pre-pandemic normal, and then it bumped back down. And I think you're going to see typical winter cycle. This is going to progress a little bit downward, but it'll be interesting to see if this push continues, if you actually will see possibly a surplus of homes in 792 next year. I would not be surprised. If you asked me to bet on it, I would say that summer of next year is going to see 130, 140 units, which is higher than the zip code has seen in a while. Again, I think buyers will be there for it. I think sellers will understand. And honestly, I don't know that all of them will, but one thing that you can see right here, look at this. Even as you see inventory rising, transaction volume kind of heating up, look at price. It's just like it was last year. It's like a line, just kind of drifts up towards the 480 mark and just sits there. Now, what does this tell you? If you're a seller, are you going to expect to sell this house more than you did last year? According to the data class, more or less, or the same, arguably the same. Now, sellers across Orlando, the reason why we run such high price cut percentages, and by the way, price cuts in this zip code, my friends, right now is 36.8%. That's about 20% higher than the rest of the Orlando metro area. So in 792, price cuts are elevated. In 789, it's a little less. Also, but you're also seeing a higher move of more supply in 792. So the zip code out to the east, seeing a little bit more of a price cut. Now, why this happens is because sellers do not pay attention to the data, okay? The agents that they hire at their side don't tell them that, hey, listen, if the price is sliding sideways, you don't go way over the last transaction and expect to sell. And that's what oftentimes sellers will do. So they'll say, okay, the last guy sold for $550. I'm going to ask $575. And we all know if your home were apples to apples identical, the market time and time again, buyers will stand off the seller in that case until that seller will accept a $550 asking price. And sometimes all the seller does is ask for more and end up hitting the price cut moment. And ultimately, we have these high numbers of price cut percentages till they get the property within range and they end up finally selling where the market has already set the price. It's very consistent, honestly, through most areas of Orlando. Very consistent that a property will sell in line with what it's sold for before. Buyers are now saying, if you don't blink, I won't buy your property. If you don't move, then the house is yours. You, Mr. Seller, are the highest bidder. You're outbidding me. I will go find a different home. And all the sellers do is they eventually realize they've cost themselves nothing but time. The more time you're on the market, the more people meander through your home and buy another house. And it's a big pain in the butt. But are you online seeing this? Are you seeing homes that you're like, I know what these have been selling for. This isn't priced right. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing the notion of price cutting on the way back down? And it's honestly, it's a hard way to do it. But sellers are the boss and they hire the agent, and the agent may or may not understand that this is the truth. And so they end up with longer down market times.
When you're buying or selling a home, the process itself can feel overwhelming.
When this happens, you need a real estate expert that can turn this around for you. So all you need to do, make one call, that's all, and put nearly 4,000 homes sold and my 23 years of experience to work for you.
Jared Jones is the way to go. Call 706-5000.
If you're in the Central Florida area and you're looking for a great church, I'd love for you to join me at the Grove Bible Chapel. Just visit joinmeatthegrove.com for full details.